Imagine a morning 4,000 years ago in the dense Amazon rainforest. The air is thick with humidity, carrying the earthy scent of decomposing leaves and the sweet perfume of exotic flowers. Steam still rises from the earth, wet from the night's torrential rain, and among the green shadows that dance with the first rays of sunlight filtering through the canopy, a young hunter-gatherer pauses before a strange tree. Its orange fruits hang like natural lanterns, their vibrant color standing out against the deep emerald backdrop of the forest. These pod-like fruits, some as large as a human hand, hide within them dark seeds that would forever change humanity's relationship with pleasure, spirituality, and the very concept of what food could be. The hunter-gatherer, perhaps no more than 20 years old, reaches out with calloused fingers toward one of these mysterious fruits, unaware that this single moment would ripple through millennia of human civilization. He doesn't know it yet, but he's about to discover what the Mayans would call the food of the gods, cacao. But what truly happened in that first encounter between humans and this flavor that would awaken passions, create empires, fuel conquests, inspire poets, and touch something deep within our primitive souls? How did a simple seed, bitter and unpalatable in its raw form, transform into humanity's first chocolate? This isn't just a story about food discovery, it's a tale of human curiosity, innovation, and our species' unique ability to transform the mundane into the magical. It's about how our ancestors, driven by an insatiable hunger, not just for sustenance, but for experience, stumbled upon what would become one of the most beloved and psychologically powerful substances in human history. Approximately 5,500 years ago, in the tropical forests of what we now know as Ecuador and Brazil, hunter-gatherer peoples made their first experiments with a peculiar tree, Theobroma cacao, literally meaning food of the gods. Unlike the European cave dwellers of the Paleolithic era, who were still struggling with basic survival in harsh climatic conditions, these early Americans had already mastered sophisticated food processing techniques. They had developed complex methods for extracting toxins from cassava roots, fermenting various fruits to enhance their nutritional value, and creating elaborate cooking techniques using heated stones and clay vessels. Their knowledge of botanical properties was encyclopedic. They could identify hundreds of edible plants, knew which ones required specific preparation methods, and understood the seasonal patterns of forest productivity. These weren't primitive peoples in the crude sense we often imagine. They were sophisticated botanists, chemists, and culinary innovators working with the tools and knowledge available to them in their time. The discovery wasn't accidental. These peoples were keen observers of nature, spending their entire lives in intimate contact with the forest ecosystem. They observed monkeys and other animals breaking open cacao pods to consume the sweet white pulp surrounding the seeds, a practice that provided crucial clues about the fruit's edibility. The spider monkeys would crack open the hard outer shell with their powerful jaws, slurp the sweet mucilage, and then carelessly discard the dark, bitter seeds. Parrots and other birds would do the same, attracted by the sweet aroma of the ripe pods. But while the animals discarded the bitter seeds, human curiosity, that defining characteristic of our species, went further. Some brave ancestor, perhaps driven by hunger during a lean season, or maybe just by the irrepressible human urge to experiment, tasted those dark seeds and discovered that, despite the initial bitterness that made the mouth pucker and the throat constrict, something special happened. There was an aftertaste, a lingering sensation, and most importantly, a subtle change in how they felt. More alert, slightly euphoric, as if the forest itself had shared one of its secrets. Imagine the scene in vivid detail. The first human slowly chewing these seeds, the initial shock of bitterness giving way to complex flavors, earthy, slightly fruity, with hints of what we might now describe as nutty or even floral notes. As the bitter compounds dissolved on the tongue, they felt the gradual release of what we now know as theobromine and phenylethylamine, powerful substances that cause feelings of well-being, euphoria, and even a primitive kind of chemical passion. The theobromine began to dilate blood vessels, increasing circulation and creating a gentle warming sensation throughout the body. The phenylethylamine triggered the release of endorphins and dopamine, creating a subtle but unmistakable mood elevation. It was as if nature had hidden an emotional secret within those seeds, as if the forest itself was offering a gift that went beyond mere nutrition. The person chewing these seeds might have noticed their heartbeat quickening slightly, their senses becoming more acute, colors appearing more vivid, sounds more distinct. They were experiencing humanity's first documented psychoactive food experience. The real evolutionary leap came when these peoples discovered that fire, that great transformer of human civilization, completely revolutionized the cacao experience. Around 3,800 years ago, in the region that is now Mexico, the Olmecs began to roast cacao beans, and something absolutely magical happened. This wasn't a random experiment. It likely emerged from accidents where cacao beans fell into cooking fires, or from the systematic experimentation that characterized these early American cultures. The Olmecs were master fire workers, skilled in techniques of roasting, smoking, and heat-treating various foods to enhance their flavors and nutritional properties. They had already developed sophisticated pottery for cooking and had learned to control fire temperatures for different purposes. When they applied these techniques to cacao beans, they unleashed a transformation that would captivate humanity for millennia. The heat broke down cell walls, released essential oils that had been locked within the bean's structure, and created entirely new aromatic compounds through complex chemical reactions we now call the Maillard reaction. The harsh, astringent bitterness gave way to complex notes, earthy like the forest floor after rain, fruity like the tropical abundance surrounding them, sometimes even floral like the orchids and bromeliads that decorated their world. The roasting process caramelized natural sugars, broke down bitter alkaloids into more palatable compounds, and created hundreds of new flavor molecules that hadn't existed in the raw bean. It was as if fire was a primitive alchemist, transforming an unpleasant experience into something transcendent, something that spoke to parts of human consciousness that had never been touched before by food. The aroma alone became intoxicating, rich, complex, promising pleasures that the nose could detect, but the mind couldn't yet fully comprehend. Visualize the scene in the flickering light of antiquity, a crackling bonfire in the darkness of a tropical night, its orange flames dancing against the star-filled sky. Women and men sitting in a circle on woven mats, their faces illuminated by the warm glow, children playing at the edges of the light. The sweet, intense aroma of roasted cacao wafting through the air, mixing with the smoke and creating an atmosphere of anticipation and wonder. Clay vessels filled with water heating near the coals, waiting to receive the precious roasted beans. The sound of grinding stones working rhythmically as the roasted beans were crushed into a coarse paste. For the first time in human history, people were not just satisfying hunger. They were creating a complete sensory experience, a ritual that engaged sight, smell, taste, touch, and even hearing. They were developing what we now recognize as cuisine, the transformation of mere sustenance into an art form, a social bonding activity, a sacred moment that connected them to something larger than themselves. Olmec shamans, the spiritual leaders and knowledge keepers of their communities, soon realized that this drink, made with roasted cacao, water, and sometimes wild honey collected from forest beehives, not only nourished the body, but fundamentally altered consciousness. They noticed that people who consumed the cacao drink reported more vivid dreams, filled with colors and scenarios that seemed to connect them to the spirit world. The drink increased energy and focus during long ceremonial rituals and spiritual practices, allowing participants to maintain concentration for hours without fatigue. Most importantly, it created a sense of connection to the divine, a feeling that the boundary between the physical and spiritual worlds had become more permeable. The shamans began to incorporate cacao into their healing practices, their divination rituals, and their ceremonies marking important life transitions. They observed that the drink seemed to open channels of communication between people, making them more empathetic, more connected to each other and to the natural world around them. Unbeknownst to them, these ancient peoples had discovered humanity's first pharmacological food, a substance that was simultaneously nutrition and medicine, sustenance and sacrament. Modern science has revealed that cacao contains over 300 different chemical compounds, creating one of the most complex flavor profiles found in any natural food. But some of these compounds are particularly powerful for the human brain, creating effects that our ancestors could feel but not scientifically understand. They were conducting sophisticated biochemistry without laboratories, discovering neurological effects without understanding neurons, and creating pharmaceutical experiences using only the tools of fire, water, and grinding stones. Theobromine, the primary alkaloid in cacao, acts as a mild stimulant that increases blood flow throughout the body and brain, causing feelings of alertness and mental clarity without the jittery anxiety that comes with caffeine. Unlike caffeine, which creates a sharp spike in energy followed by a crash, theobromine provides a sustained, gentle elevation in mood and alertness that can last for hours. Phenylethylamine, known scientifically as the love molecule, is the same substance our brain releases when we fall in love. It triggers the release of dopamine and norepinephrine, creating feelings of attraction, excitement, and euphoria. And anandamide, whose name comes from the Sanskrit word for bliss, activates the same brain receptors as cannabis, creating feelings of relaxation, happiness, and mild euphoria. These compounds work synergistically, creating a complex psychological experience that is simultaneously stimulating and relaxing, energizing and calming. Imagine the profound impact of this discovery on a mind that had never experienced anything like it. For the first time in human history, people had access to a natural substance that not only nourished the body, but fundamentally transformed their emotional and spiritual state. It was as if nature itself had created the first happiness drug, a gift from the plant kingdom that could elevate human consciousness and create experiences of transcendence and bliss. The psychological effects were so pronounced that people began to organize their lives around this substance, developing rituals, ceremonies, and social practices that incorporated cacao as a central element. It became clear that this wasn't just food. It was a tool for altering consciousness, for connecting with the divine, for creating deeper bonds between people. The effects were so profound and consistent that these societies began to associate cacao with deities, fertility, and power. It was no longer just food. It was medicine that could heal both body and spirit. It was ritual that could connect the community to the sacred. It was a bridge to higher forces and deeper understanding. Cacao became central to creation myths, with some cultures believing that humans themselves were created from cacao and corn. Priests and shamans used cacao to induce visions and communicate with gods. Warriors consumed it before battles, believing it would give them supernatural strength and courage. Healers prescribed it for ailments ranging from physical illness to spiritual malaise. The substance had transcended its botanical origins to become a fundamental part of human culture and spirituality. Over centuries and millennia, what began as an accidental discovery by hunter-gatherers evolved into something much more complex and sophisticated. The Mayans, between 600–900 CE, had already developed elaborate recipes that would impress modern chocolatiers. They mixed cacao with chili peppers to create heat and stimulation, vanilla orchids for sweetness and aroma, wild honey for additional sugars and complexity, and even flowers like magnolia and rose for delicate floral notes. They created different preparations for different occasions, bitter and spicy for warriors, sweet and aromatic for celebrations, thick and nourishing for sustenance during long journeys. They developed techniques for fermenting cacao beans, drying them in the sun, and storing them for months without spoilage. They created specialized tools and vessels for preparing cacao drinks, beautiful ceramics decorated with images of cacao pods, gods, and mythological scenes. But what's most fascinating from an anthropological perspective is how cacao shaped primitive social behaviors and became integrated into the fundamental structures of human society. In Mesoamerican societies, offering cacao was a gesture of hospitality that communicated respect, friendship, and peaceful intentions. It was offered to honored guests, to potential allies, and to anyone the host wished to honor. The act of sharing cacao created social bonds that transcended tribal or familial connections. It was also central to romantic courtship. Young men would offer specially prepared cacao drinks to the families of women they wished to marry, and the quality and complexity of the preparation was seen as a reflection of the suitor's character and intentions. It was as if these early humans had intuitively discovered that sharing this special flavor created deeper bonds between people, that the psychological effects of cacao could facilitate communication, empathy, and understanding. Wedding ceremonies throughout Mesoamerica included elaborate exchanges of cacao between families, symbolizing the union not just of two individuals, but of two lineages. The bride and groom would share a special cacao drink as part of their marriage vows, creating a bond that was simultaneously physical, emotional, and spiritual. Rites of passage marking the transition from childhood to adulthood invariably involved the first taste of the sacred drink, often mixed with other ceremonial substances and consumed under the guidance of elders and spiritual leaders. Warriors would drink cacao before battles, believing it would give them courage, strength, and spiritual protection. The ritual preparation and consumption of the drink became as important as the substance itself, creating sacred moments that connected individuals to their communities and to the divine forces they believed governed their world. Archaeologists have uncovered fascinating evidence of cacao's central role in ancient American societies. Ceramic vessels with cacao residues in tombs, indicating that even in death, people wanted to take this transcendent flavor with them to the afterlife. Elaborate burial sites have revealed cacao beans placed in the mouths of the deceased, cacao vessels positioned near the body, and murals depicting the journey of souls through cacao-filled paradise realms. It was as if cacao had become part of human identity itself, so central to the human experience that it couldn't be left behind even in death. The substance had evolved from a food discovery to a fundamental element of human spirituality and cultural identity. The story of cacao reveals something profound about what it means to be human, our unique capacity to transform the material world through imagination, experimentation, and cultural innovation. While other animals are content with basic nutrition and survival, we are the only species that actively seeks complex and transformative sensory experiences. We are the only creatures who take a bitter seed and through ingenuity, creativity, and cultural transmission, transform it into something that can alter consciousness, create social bonds, and generate experiences of transcendence and bliss. This drive to transform the mundane into the magical, to find meaning and pleasure in the natural world, to create culture and spirituality from raw materials, is perhaps the most defining characteristic of our species. Our ancestors weren't satisfied with simply finding calories to fuel their bodies. They wanted flavors that touched their primitive souls, experiences that elevated their consciousness, substances that could connect them to something larger than themselves. This explains why, even today, chocolate awakens something so primitive and irresistible within us. It's not just a sweet treat or a simple pleasure. It's an echo of thousands of years of cultural and emotional evolution. When we taste chocolate, we're connecting to an unbroken chain of human experience that stretches back to those first hunter-gatherers in the Amazon rainforest. We're participating in a ritual that has been refined and passed down through countless generations, each adding their own innovations and cultural meanings to the basic experience of cacao consumption. The theobromine in cacao acts on the same brain receptors that our ancestors developed to process rewards and social bonds, neural pathways that evolved to help humans navigate complex social relationships and find pleasure in cooperation and sharing. When we eat chocolate, we're not just satisfying a craving or indulging in a guilty pleasure. We're reliving one of humanity's first spiritual experiences, reconnecting with ancient patterns of consciousness that have been encoded in our genes and our culture for millennia. The pleasure we feel is both deeply personal and profoundly universal, connecting us to every human who has ever tasted cacao and felt that unmistakable surge of well-being and contentment. Today, when you feel that inexplicable pleasure while tasting quality chocolate, the way time seems to slow down, the way colors seem brighter, the way a sense of contentment spreads through your body, you're experiencing echoes of a discovery made millennia ago by peoples who never imagined that their food of the gods would spread throughout the entire world. You're participating in a human tradition that predates written language, that survived the collapse of civilizations, that transcended cultural and geographical boundaries to become one of the few truly universal human pleasures. The chocolate you taste today carries within it the accumulated wisdom of thousands of years of human experimentation, cultural innovation, and spiritual exploration. Those first humans who dared to taste bitter seeds in the Amazon rainforest weren't just discovering a flavor, they were discovering a new dimension of the human experience, a realm where food becomes medicine, where consumption becomes ritual, where the act of eating becomes a pathway to transcendence. They taught us that being human isn't just about surviving, isn't just about meeting basic biological needs, but about seeking moments of beauty, pleasure, and connection that can transform ordinary existence into something extraordinary. They showed us that the simplest discoveries can have the most profound consequences, that curiosity and experimentation can unlock experiences that enrich human life in ways we never expected. And perhaps this is what connects us most deeply with our Paleolithic ancestors, this tireless search for experiences that touch something deeper than mere necessity, this drive to find meaning and pleasure in the material world, this capacity to transform simple biological functions into complex cultural and spiritual practices. Cacao was just the beginning of a journey that continues today. Every time we pause to truly savor something special, every time we share food as an expression of love or friendship, every time we use taste and flavor to create memories and connections that transcend the purely physical act of eating. The next time you taste chocolate, really taste it, letting it melt slowly on your tongue, paying attention to the complex symphony of flavors and the subtle changes in how you feel. Remember that you are participating in a ritual that began thousands of years ago when someone very much like you discovered that life can be sweeter, richer, and more meaningful than we ever imagined. You are connecting to an ancient tradition of human exploration and discovery, adding your own experience to a story that has been unfolding for millennia and will continue long after we are gone. If this journey through ancestral flavor has made you rethink our primitive connection to life's pleasures, like this video and subscribe to the channel. And tell me in the comments, What flavor do you think our ancestors discovered first? Sweet, salty, or bitter? What other discoveries might have had similar profound impacts on human consciousness and culture? Let's keep exploring these delicious mysteries of human evolution together, uncovering the stories hidden in every taste, every tradition, every moment of pleasure that connects us to our shared human heritage.